The final item of business today is the members' business debate on motion number 4027 in the name of Jim Eadie on caring for and curing boys and men with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would be grateful if those members who wish to speak in the debate could press the request to speak buttons now. And I call on Jim Eadie to open the debate. 7 minutes, Mr Eadie.
Presiding Officer, parents are not meant to outlive their children. It is impossible to imagine what it must be like for any parent to contemplate living longer than their child. But that is exactly the position faced by tens of families across the country. I am grateful to my colleagues in all parties, 45 of whom have signed the motion to allow this debate on Duchenne muscular dystrophy to take place. A currently incurable muscle-wasting disease, Duchenne affects 1 in every 3,500 male births in the UK. This devastating condition, the most common form of muscular dystrophy, mostly affects boys when their bodies don't produce dystrophin, a protein that helps protect muscle. Without it, the muscles weaken, break down and are replaced by fibrous tissue. The first symptoms appear between the ages of 1 and 3 and usually result in boys affected requiring a wheelchair by the ages of 8 to 11. Those affected may eventually need spinal rods to keep upright, and by the age of 30, Duchenne is life-threatening as the heart and lungs are affected, with the most severe cases needing respirators to breathe. This motion commends the work of Action Duchenne, the charity which supports those boys and men living with DMD. I would like to pay tribute to Dean Widd, its Regional Development Officer, and pay special thanks to my constituent, John Miller, Advocacy Officer for Action Duchenne Scotland, his grandson Lee, aged 14, who has Duchenne, and his dad Gary, all of who are in the public gallery this evening, as well as thanking Lee's mum Joyce, who is looking after Lee's brothers this evening. John has done a phenomenal amount to raise awareness of the condition, as well as lobbying for DMD to achieve the clinical and political priority it deserves. I would also like to pay tribute to the boys and men living with Duchenne, their families, care support workers and the healthcare professionals involved in their care. I would also like to record my own thanks to the Muscular Dystrophy campaign for the work that they do. I am grateful to Dr Keith Foster of the University of Reading, formerly of Royal Holloway College, University of London, for making me aware of his groundbreaking research highlighted in the motion, such as the adeno-associated viruses U7 clinical trial into potentially highly effective exon-skipping treatment. The landscape for the development of gene medicines based on AAV has changed considerably over the last 2 years. Earlier this month, the European Commission licensed an AAV gene medicine for the first time, Glybera. While not in the field of DMD, this is a landmark moment defining a clear pathway for AAV-based gene medicines from the research laboratory bench to regulatory approval. 2 life science companies, GlaxoSmithKline and Prosensa, have already started treatment in a Phase 3 clinical study in ambulant boys with DMD who have a dystrophin gene mutation amenable to an exon 51 skip, up to 13% of boys with DMD. This randomised placebo-controlled study has enrolled 180 patients from 18 countries and is currently the most advanced ongoing study. I understand that all of the Phase 3 clinical trial data is expected to be submitted to the European Medicines Evaluation Agency by early 2014. 2 further AAV-based research programmes have recently been approved and are recruiting patients for clinical trials that will start early in 2013. One research programme based in Paris will try to mask the mutation within the boy's muscle cells. The other research programme in the United States will deliver a truncated DMD mini-gene using AAV into the muscles of DMD patients. Importantly, with respect to clinical translation, parameters to safely deliver AAV viruses systemically to humans have also recently been defined and approved. According to Dr Foster, within the field of DMD research, progress has been astounding. For the first time, I have developed a method to restore a full-length DMD gene to muscle using 3 safe AAVs. Dr Foster states that this research is highly significant, such that a programme will be applicable for all patients with DMD and is long overdue. The opportunity is for Scotland to be part of this groundbreaking research. Now, high-quality testing relies on clinical trials involving large numbers of patients. In relation to muscular dystrophy, Scotland does not have the patient population required to achieve this on its own, but that does not mean that we cannot or should not contribute to UK and international research. Contributing to international research is one of the Scottish Muscle Network's main functions, and it has been involved in encouraging participation in global trials in a number of ways. The network also promotes the Duchenne Registry, which ensures families can be contacted about trials in which they might participate. There are currently around 70 people on the register. This collaborative approach is where the focus must lie, and it is here that the Scottish Government, through the Chief Scientist Office and the Health Research Strategy, has an important role to play. Action Duchenne is contributing £161,000 to support Dr Foster's research at the University of Reading. Now, I would like to see Scotland play its part through co-funding arrangements so that we can support the joint initiative between Reading and Glasgow universities. Future studies in Glasgow will evaluate improvements to cardiac tissue. These co-funding arrangements would allow greater value and greater resource to be generated by the Chief Scientist Office, working in partnership with medical research charities and potentially other health departments in the UK to support this pioneering research. This has the potential to deliver the genetic medicines which will benefit boys and men with DMD. The motion also refers to a simplified means of clinical trials for genetic medicines to be explored, and here I am delighted that progress is being made through the development of a roadmap that highlights the checkpoints and blockages that currently exist in the gene medicine developmental pathway for rare diseases, so that we can fast-track clinical research programmes while ensuring the first principle of safety. If we both invest in research and improve the means for clinical trials, we will meet the ambition set out by the First Minister when he stated in June 2008 that we are determined that standards of care and life expectancy should match those in other countries. This debate is primarily concerned with the breakthrough in research which is giving hope to people with Duchenne and their families, but I would like to end as I began by putting this debate into its proper context by quoting from my constituent Mark Chapman, who spoke eloquently at the lobby of Parliament earlier this year. Mark said, "As adults, we need support with social inclusion. We need access to education and employment. We need equipment such as cough assists and ventilators at point of need. We need access to new drugs and treatment. We have a right to live as best we can, be that independent living or not. We have the right to relationships, sex, and our own families, should we choose. We demand our right to live life. Dealing with Duchenne should be a big enough fight on its own." By supporting this research, the Scottish Government can leverage the value of every Scottish pound spent by matching it with research funding from elsewhere in the UK. If we do that, we will be meeting our moral and practical obligations to this group of exceptional and inspirational individuals and their families by finding a cure for this horrendous disease.
Thank you. I now call Jackie Bailey to be followed by Graham Day.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and can I be the first to congratulate Jim Eadie on securing this debate and acknowledge very much the work of Action Duchenne in supporting boys and men with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Presiding Officer, I'm very proud to be the convener of the cross-party group on muscular dystrophy, and we benefit from the experience of people like John Miller, who, of course, as we know, is the Scottish Advocacy Officer for Action Duchenne. John never stops talking about Lee, so can I associate myself with Jim Eadie's remarks about both John's work and indeed his family too. But working with the Muscular Dystrophy campaign, the cross-party group have spent much of their time focused on what we can do to improve the experience of people with muscular dystrophy. A lot of that has been inevitably about services, the development of specialist multidisciplinary care, better transition services, better access to physiotherapy, the need for specialist muscle care advisors, and the need for healthcare and social care to be better joined up. At the time, we produced the Mackey report, setting out quite clearly what could be achieved based on evidence from health and social care professionals, and more importantly, based on evidence from those with muscular dystrophy and their families. And the Scottish Government's response was helpful. But I wonder if I might raise a continuing problem with the employment of specialist muscle care advisors. The Minister will recall that there were to be 3 full-time care advisor posts in this financial year, and that was a hugely welcome commitment from him. My understanding is that currently 2 are in place, but the north of Scotland have yet to employ someone. Now, whilst there may have been recruitment difficulties, the Minister will know just how important these posts are to those with muscular dystrophy, providing, as they do, essential care and support. It would be helpful if the Minister has time to know what action is being taken to ensure that the appointment is made as quickly as possible and that the long-term future of these posts is secure. But let me return to Duchenne specifically. The thought that the groundbreaking research highlighted by Jim Eadie may lead to the production of genetic medicine that will improve the treatment and condition of those with Duchenne's is truly fantastic. Now, I don't pretend to understand what exon skipping is all about or what AVV-based medicine actually does, but what matters is that it will make a huge difference. The lesson for us all is to ensure that we keep investing in research as well as considering the impact of services and our desire to improve services for those with muscular dystrophy. And I know, as Jim Eadie outlined, that Action Duchenne will do just that, as will the Muscular Dystrophy Campaign with their extensive research programme too. But let me also join with them in paying tribute to the campaigners, the fundraisers, the researchers, because without their efforts over the years, much of this would have been so much more difficult to achieve. And he is absolutely right. We should be contributing to international research. We should be participating in global clinical trials. And co-funding of initiatives such as this, working in partnership with others, will undoubtedly lead to quicker and more significant progress. And that is something I too would commend to the Scottish Government. But lastly, Presiding Officer, we appear to be mentioning the same people tonight. Jim Eadie and I are at one on this. Can I commend to those who haven't seen it yet to watch Mark Chapman's film? It's called A Life Worth Living, Pushing the Limits of Duchenne. Now, I wasn't able to make the screening in the Parliament in June. Indeed, it might have even been its premiere in the Parliament in June. But I've managed to see it since then, and I would recommend it to colleagues. Mark is not defined by his disability or his condition. Rather, he is a shining example of what you can do and the richness of life. And therefore, I'm very pleased to participate in this debate, Presiding Officer, and once again, congratulate Jim Eadie for bringing it to the Chamber.
Thank you very much. I now call Graham Day to be followed by Nanette Milne.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I have to confess that my knowledge of Duchenne muscular dystrophy was until recently rather sketchy, and I suspect such ignorance of this awful disease is widespread, which, given as the motion notes, 1 in every 3,500 or so male births in the UK is affected by DMD. It's quite a regrettable state of affairs. But awareness of this condition and its devastating consequences for the victims and their families has, over these past few months, increased markedly in the major population centre within the constituency that I represent, and for the most unfortunate of reasons. You see, we have in our midst in the town of Arbroath one of the most heartbreaking examples of the devastating impact of DMD. Presiding Officer, for most of us, the thought of seeing our child or a loved one suffer from and then die from a degenerative genetic condition is just too painful to imagine. But for Norman and Yvonne Matheson, along with their daughter Claire, this has, however, been a reality, not once but twice. And the pain for this family goes on. In little over 2 years, the Mathesons have lost 2 of their 3 sons to this condition. The remaining son, Daniel, their firstborn, is wheelchair-bound, and they recognise living on borrowed time. Daniel and his family have been living with this life-shortening condition for 20 years now. The family has spent these past few months fundraising to grant him his last wish. In 2007, Norman and Yvonne took the entire family to Florida. Daniel wants to return there one more time. The family set about trying to raise the £10,000 it would take to meet the cost of a 29-day trip to the USA. Talking to Mr Matheson yesterday in preparation for this debate, it emerged that the sum involved has successfully been raised in the space of just 11 weeks, and in 4 weeks' time the family will be heading to the Sunshine State. I'm sure that all of us in this chamber would wish the trip to be everything that Daniel and his family would hope for. And whilst making preparations for the Florida holiday will, I'm sure, be uppermost in the family's minds, I'm equally sure that they will be taking an interest in this debate, for they have been actively campaigning to raise awareness of DMD for some time now. Back in 2009, they were part of a lobby of Parliament for that very purpose, and they tell me they'll be returning to this place next year to pursue that agenda. Hopefully the staging of this debate, and can I congratulate Jim Eadie for securing it, will add momentum to the efforts which are being made, not only to raise awareness of DMD, but more importantly to develop some form of effective response to the disease. I know that the campaigning group Action Duchenne are arguing for a centre of excellence specific to this disease to be created in Scotland. Whether with only, I understand it's 150 identified sufferers north of the border, it would be viable or indeed practical to have such an arrangement, I'm not sure. It strikes me that for geographical reasons and the travel challenges such a set-up might pose some patients and their families, then perhaps the best solution is to ensure the NHS seeks to deliver a quality service at a more localised level. It also has to be acknowledged, of course, that there are other forms of muscular dystrophy, and any commitment of resources in this direction would surely have to take account of that. But judgments such as these, of course, can really only be made based on the advice of experts in the field. What I think we, the less expert, can do today in the context of this debate is acknowledge the advances which are being made in the field of genetic medicine and commit ourselves to supporting these. It seems that we're still nowhere near finding a cure for the disease, but as Jim Eadie has highlighted, experimental treatments are being trialled and showing promise. The sad reality is that whatever progress is made in this area, it will come too late for Daniel Matheson. But for other much younger DMD sufferers, there is, it seems, some hope on the horizon. And I wonder if the Minister, as well as perhaps outlining how services in Scotland for people with DMD may develop, that he might be able to offer us the Government's perspective on the advances that are being made in search of a treatment and an indication of how we might contribute to this. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Nanette Millen to be followed by Mary Fee.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Like others, I welcome this debate and congratulate Jim Eadie for bringing this extremely important issue before the Chamber today. Chronic neuromuscular conditions often feature as a subject matter for members' business debates, but this evening's debate is one of the few to highlight a condition that strikes in childhood and which predominantly affects young boys. All such conditions have a common thread. They're all relatively rare in population terms. They tend to be the Cinderellas of the NHS because its focus is inevitably on the more common diseases that affect the bulk of the population. The needs of the groups of people who suffer from such diseases are similar. Many are progressive, most are currently incurable, and top-class research is vital if the underlying causes are to be found and treatments and potential cures developed. And it's very exciting that such research is now beginning to produce results. Tonight's motion sends out a message of hope of very real health improvement to people suffering from Duchenne muscular dystrophy, with current research likely to result in the development in the next few years of a series of genetic medicines with the potential to benefit a proportion of patients, and hopefully with the possibility of more to come in the not-too-distant future. Such genetic medicines were undreamt of until fairly recently, and are a significant step forward in the search for an effective cure for such a debilitating condition. And I fully support Jim Eadie's plea for Scotland to be part of collaborative clinical trials. In the meantime, however, sufferers from Duchenne muscular dystrophy deserve the best possible care and support and state-of-the-art equipment to help them cope with their disabilities. Advice from specialist nurses and physiotherapists, adaptations to housing on the recommendation of occupational therapists, and in the case of DMD sufferers who also have learning difficulties, the support of specialist teaching staff can all make a tremendous difference to quality of life and can enhance life expectancy. In preparing for the debate, Presiding Officer, I read once again the Muscular Dystrophy Campaign's Daily Living Fact Sheet, produced a few years back now, which made it clear that boys with DMD do best when they're educated in school, and that with careful planning, it's possible to ensure that a child's time at school can enhance his range of experiences and quality of life, and provide opportunities to enjoy a wide variety of activities and develop friendships. Without that, life for these children can be very restricted and isolated. Many boys with DMD have done very well at school, passing exams and attaining university degrees. Some move on to jobs, and many gain enormous pleasure from swimming, reading, painting, playing musical instruments, or operating computers. However, such achievements are possible only if their talents and abilities are recognised and supported from an early age. And unfortunately, I think Scotland has been some way behind other countries in that respect. As a result, the choice of school, mainstream or special needs, day school or boarding school, is important. And the fact that pupils with DMD have different needs should be taken into account when their education is being planned, although it's reckoned that with the right planning, most boys can be educated in a local mainstream school. Future planning is also essential to ensure that as the condition progresses, the necessary facilities, equipment and support are readily available. Regular reviews and assessments are therefore required, and as the children grow, there should be early planning for transition between schools and college or university. Moreover, children shouldn't just become passive recipients of care, they must be allowed to develop independence of thought and given freedom to make choices. Social integration is another essential ingredient of a happy, fulfilled life, and ensuring that that takes place will prove easier the earlier a child can be integrated into school. And they certainly deserve no less. I recall a debate that was initiated into this matter a few years back by a former colleague, Sylvia Jackson, MSP, and at the time I raised the issue that by the age of 12, most boys with DMD need to use a powered wheelchair at least some of the time. So can I ask the Minister what progress has been made on the issue of wheelchair supply in Scotland, and particularly in our rural areas such as Aberdeenshire, which I represent? I hope the Minister can give a commitment this evening in the interest not only of DMD sufferers, for whom I'm principally speaking, but of many people with chronic neuromuscular conditions who might need appropriate modern wheelchairs to achieve mobility. Presiding Officer, I think this evening's debate must give real hope for many people afflicted with DMD, and I look forward to hearing of future developments in the care and treatment of men and boys who are diagnosed with the condition. And once again, I thank Jim Eadie for sponsoring this debate, and I support the motion.
Thank you. And I call Mary Fee to be followed by Malcolm Chisholm.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I too thank Jim Eadie for bringing this debate to the Chamber and giving us the opportunity to discuss this very important condition. Action Duchenne have 70 families registered with their charity in Scotland. However, that does not suggest that each family has only one son with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. We know what can cause DMD and the symptoms of the disease. However, not enough is known about the treatment and cure of DMD. Small steps are being taken, and it is encouraging that new gene therapy techniques such as exon skipping could be on the market in the UK by 2014. However, it's likely to only help 14% of DMD sufferers. We do need to look at different models of care while a cure is found. The differences in life expectancy in Denmark, a country with the same population size and birth incidence of DMD as Scotland, are striking. In Denmark, they have twice the number of adult DMD survivors, with 79 compared with 39 in Scotland. In Scotland, adult patients can live to their early 30s. However, in Denmark, adult patients can reach a life expectancy of late 30s. And currently there are no differences in treatment or drugs available in Denmark, and it appears the difference is down to levels of care. And I am hopeful that the self-directed support bill will be able to make improvements in this. In Denmark, all DMD patients have round-the-clock care, and their houses are adapted to make them suitable for DMD patients, and if they cannot be adapted, then the family is moved to a new home. It would appear that Scotland is lacking in expert care provision for DMD patients. And the UK altogether has 2 centres of excellence in treating DMD in Great Ormond Street Hospital in London and in Newcastle. According to Action Duchenne, in the last 18 months, it's been found that life expectancy for DMD patients around Newcastle is much better than life expectancy in Scotland. Patients of DMD can experience respiratory problems, motor problems, and in some cases scoliosis. The advantages that people living round these centres of excellence have is access to a core team of experts who are on hand to help DMD patients. However, it's not only in times of crisis that the centre helps. They carry out routine check-ups of DMD patients in the surrounding area and monitor their condition, and it is worrying that Scottish patients do not have the same expertise in their own areas. In Scotland, patients have to wait weeks and sometimes months to be individually assessed by different doctors. The McCollum report, released in Northern Ireland this year, pointed out that based on NHS data, emergency unplanned admissions to hospital of neuromuscular patients, including those with DMD, cost £2.27 million. It also states that 40% of this could be saved with better monitoring of the condition. Investing into and joining up neuromuscular services would lead to a large overall saving, whilst also giving those with Duchenne a longer and better quality of life. I feel it would be to the benefit of all DMD patients if we can have a centre of excellence in Scotland, a place that can offer expert care, advice and information. Once DMD is diagnosed, a comprehensive care plan can be created for the child that details everything from early years right up to teenage years. It can also work in liaison with the local authority to give maximum support. However, even then, there is a postcode lottery when it comes to local authority services. Stirling Council provides free hydrotherapy sessions for DMD patients, whereas patients in Renfrewshire either have to pay or receive their hydrotherapy through private medical care. Scotland does have gaps in its care for DMD patients. Small but important initiatives, such as the free provision of hydrotherapy, can extend life expectancy. Important research is being carried out to find a cure for DMD. However, until one is found, we need a care model structured around the needs of sufferers to give patients a better life expectancy and a fighting chance. Thank you.
Thank you. And I call Malcolm Chisholm.
Presiding Officer, I'd like to start by congratulating Jim Eadie on bringing forward this important and interesting motion, which also, of course, has an encouraging and hopeful message at its heart. Our first thought when confronted with this tragic genetic disease is, of course, for the boys who are affected and their families. I first became aware of this when I was approached by my constituent, Eileen McCallum, who some members may know also, of course, as a well-known actress. She has two grandsons affected by Duchenne and has campaigned tirelessly for better care and support, as well as funding for research. As part of that, she went to Denmark to make a film of the superb care young people receive in that country, and we should certainly learn from that, and Mary Fee has already referred to that in her speech. Mary Fee also mentioned the fact that boys affected in Denmark live longer into adulthood, so I'm sure there are many lessons we can learn through looking outside of Scotland. Having said that, we should also acknowledge the developments in care and treatment that we have seen over the last few years in Scotland, and in particular through the Scottish Muscle Network, one of a large number of managed clinical networks that have greatly improved the standard of treatment and care in Scotland over the last 10 years. The focus of the debate, however, today is recent developments in gene therapy, and certainly I've been aware of this as a very exciting area of medicine for some time, particularly in relation to cancer, but I wasn't aware of the specific developments in relation to Duchenne muscular dystrophy until I read Jim Eadie's motion and looked a little bit into the background. In particular, the motion highlights the use of the adeno-associated viral vector for gene therapy, and the aim of that is to mask the deleted exon or exons that are a feature of muscular dystrophy in order to facilitate production of the dystrophin protein. And it's really encouraging to read in the motion and in some of the background papers that this gene therapy, in this case, is actually producing already some really exciting developments and results. And that's why there is such a message of hope in the motion that Jim Eadie has put forward today. Now, in terms of carrying this work forward, I think Jim Eadie came forward with some very positive and helpful suggestions, which I hope the Scottish Government will respond to in the wind-up speech. We know that Action Duchenne, and clearly we need to pay tribute to their superb work in the context of this debate as well. We know that they have been involved in partnership funding on research, and as Jim Eadie suggests, that is the model that the Scottish Government should also pursue. Clearly, the largest sums of medical research in the UK sit with the UK Government and Funding Councils, but the Chief Scientist's Office has a significant budget for research, and we know that the current Chief Scientist, the brilliant Professor Andrew Morris, has a particular interest in the genetics of medicine. So I do hope the Scottish Government will respond positively to Jim Eadie's call for involvement by the Scottish Government and the Chief Scientist's Office in particular in partnership funding for research. The other aspect, of course, that he referred to is the importance of clinical trials, and again, the motion refers to some new developments there which give us encouragement, and I hope the Scottish Government can also do all it can to ensure that those affected in Scotland are involved in clinical trials. So, in conclusion, can I once again pay tribute to Jim Eadie for bringing forward the motion, but also pay tribute to Action Duchenne and the many people who worked tirelessly for that organisation, including John Miller, who I know is in the gallery, and who prompted me to speak in this debate, and I thank him for doing that.
Thank you very much. Can I now invite Michael Matheson to respond to the debate? Minister, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I, like others, begin by congratulating Jim Eadie on securing time for this important debate and for the way in which he put forward the issues that he wanted to highlight in the course of this debate and the important issues that have been highlighted in his motion. I've got no doubt that everyone here in this chamber shares the same ambition, and that is that a cure will be developed for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, because DMD is a devastating disease which at any one time affects around 150 boys and young men in Scotland, and Jim Eadie set out the impact it can have on individuals, as others have in the course of this debate, and I thought Graham Day in particular highlighted the challenges and the difficulties that the Matheson family have faced in losing their son James, and with their son Daniel having the same conditions. And I certainly wish Daniel well on his trip to Florida in the next few weeks. However, these are also exciting times in the search for a treatment for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I think, as Jim Eadie also highlighted, it's some 25 years since the genetic variation in the dystrophin gene was identified as being the cause of DMD. And advances in medicine mean that experimental treatments are now being trialled in a way which is unimaginable some 25 years ago. For example, the DNA patches that are being designed override the genetic variation in the dystrophin gene that cause DMD. These have shown promise in laboratory trials and are currently being tested in clinical trials at the moment. And this is the exon skipping approach that Jim Eadie made reference to in his own contribution. Jim Eadie's motion also makes reference to the AAVU7 clinical trial, which is being conducted by the University College London. The basis of this trial, where the DNA patches are packaged into a virus, allows them to be effectively delivered into the patient's cells. This is clearly very exciting technology that is at the forefront of research into this form of effective treatment. But at this point, I think it would be worth, and I think it's only right, that we should also record our thanks to those with DMD who are participating in these trials at this time, because it's through these types of trials, which are absolutely essential in the steps to develop a safe and effective treatment, that we must go through a process of evaluating the effectiveness of this type of treatment. And it is only through these patients, their dedication and their selflessness and their families that we will eventually arrive at the point where I believe we will achieve more effective treatment in this area. A particular challenge is in the treatment of DMD in how it protects and how to protect and restore the function of the heart muscle. I'm aware that Dr. Foster, one of the leaders of the AAVU7 trial, is developing a research project on this subject with a group of Glasgow cardiologists. I would like to reassure members that the Chief Scientist's Office is happy to consider co-funding arrangements with leading UK medical charities around areas of research. And I would also like to reassure members that there is very large amounts of research that takes place in Scotland, which is part of collaborations at an international level. What I can also confirm is that officials from the Scottish Government's Chief Scientist's Office have spoken to Action Duchenne with a view to co-funding such a project. Action Duchenne provides an example of the importance of a charitable sector within the area of medical research. Their role, in partnership with the Muscular-Dystrophy campaign and Duchenne Family Support, in establishing the MDEX consortium to develop treatment for MDN, is particularly worthy of recognition. Individually, Action Duchenne also funds cutting-edge research and has established a registry of DMD patients that some members have made reference to, that plays an essential role in identifying those patients most suitable for particular clinical trials that may be available or may be getting considered at a given time. The motion also calls for a simplified governance for trials of genetic medicines. Ethical oversight of proposals to conduct clinical trials governing gene therapy is a matter which is presently reserved. However, the Scottish Government note that operational responsibility for gene therapy from the Gene Therapy Advisory Committee has been transferred to the Health Research Authority as of December last year, and we are monitoring the effectiveness of this new arrangement. Clinical trials also need to obtain NHS research and development approval, and I can assure members that this is a process which we have recently streamlined so that NHS R&D approval processes are coordinated centrally here in Scotland. And this streamlining approach means that approval time for multi-centred clinical trials in Scotland is now amongst the quickest in Europe, making Scotland a very attractive place to conduct world-leading clinical research. So I would like to reassure members that we fully recognise the importance of ensuring people with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy get access to the care and support that they need. I'd also like to highlight the important role of the Scottish Muscle Network, which Malcolm Chisholm also made reference to, in strengthening the specialist neuromuscular centres in Scotland through a collaborative approach. The network brings together the clinicians in various disciplines that contribute to the care of those with muscular dystrophy. It provides the multidisciplinary focus Action Duchenne is looking for on a Scottish-wide basis. It also gives a strong voice to families in the development of services. I hear what Mary Fee has said on the creation of a centre for excellence. Part of the challenge here in Scotland is the way in which our population is dispersed over a much greater area, which makes it very challenging to provide a single centre of excellence that could be replicated in the way in which they've been able to do so in England with much greater populations in a concentrated area. We consider that the Muscle Network is considered as Scotland's virtual centre of excellence, since it links together the 5 paediatric centres in Scotland which deliver specialist services for those with any form of muscular dystrophy or neuromuscular disorder. And I'm sure members will appreciate that it is difficult to set up a single centre in Scotland, given the particular impact that could have on families in different parts of Scotland who may have to travel a considerable distance to get access to it. The Scottish Muscle Network has also developed multidisciplinary care standards for the management of Duchenne, based on the international TRET NMD care standards. The implementation of these standards will be a key way to improving healthcare services for people with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy in Scotland. And in terms of the other work that we are taking forward, we have agreed the funding for 2 years to pilot the neuromuscular care advisors posts in the south east and Tayside and the west of Scotland, and also in the north of Scotland. 2 of these posts are already in place, and we remain fully committed to seeing the care advisor post in place in all 3 regions. Jackie Bailey raised a specific issue about the 3rd post in the north of Scotland regional planning area, and I can advise her that it has been an issue around recruitment difficulties. However, the north of Scotland have confirmed that they do intend to re-advertise the post, and we will be monitoring this closely as we wish to see the care advisor post in the north of Scotland to be recruited as soon as possible. Many people with DMD will also benefit from the £16 million that we have now invested in the wheelchair and seating services, which is to support the timely provision of wheelchairs in a way that responds to individual needs in a personalised way at an early stage. And I know that Millen raised concerns around this issue. I can also say to you we've also recently issued a wheelchair and seating quality improvement framework with standards which are attached to that, which will also bring forward further improvements to those with neuromuscular conditions.
Minister, I'd be most grateful if you could draw to a close.
In drawing my remarks to a close, I should also mention that we've also provided a further £1.5 million towards improving service for those with complex respiratory conditions, and this investment is there to help to recruit new specialists to posts, whether they be consultants, dietitians, physiotherapists, nurses, HPs, to allow people to be treated more effectively locally. And finally, drawing my remarks to a close, Presiding Officer, this is a process where I do recognise that progress has been made, but it's clear that we need to continue to build on the progress that's been made today to improve services. We remain committed to doing that, and I look forward to working with colleagues in this chamber and also those charities and organisations that wish to see further improvements taking place in Scotland to work together to make sure that people receive the best quality of service they can within Scotland.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes Jim Eadie's members' business on Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and I now close this meeting of Parliament.